This is the exact recipe and process I use to get my super puffy sourdough English muffins.
I'm making a really large batch, but the measurements I show in this video will be enough for about 12 English muffins. Start by combining 200 grams of sourdough starter, 480 grams of milk, and 40 grams of honey. I use a mixer, but you could also do this by hand. Next, add in 10 grams of salt and 720 grams of flour. I use bread flour, but you could use all-purpose as well. Once the dough is well combined, leave it sit in the mixer for about 30 minutes, and then mix it again for about 2 to 3 minutes. Add about 5 hours to whatever time it is now, and label your container so you know what time to come back and shape your dough. In the meantime, prepare your pans. I use reusable parchment paper and then a layer of cornmeal. Now it's time to grease the rings. I use clarified butter for this because it has a really high smoke point and I don't have to worry about it smoking in the oven. You could use a paper towel for this, but because I have so many to do, I find it easiest just to use a latex glove. The rings that I'm using are Campbell bun rings from PleasantHillGrain.com. I use the 3.5-inch ones. They come out to about $5 a piece, but they're worth every penny in my opinion because they're going to last forever. They're super heavy-duty steel. Just keep in mind that you will need to grease them every time because they are not lined with anything. Because I'm usually making over 100 English muffins at a time, I typically just watch an episode of TV while I'm working because this part can get quite boring. Once you've hit your 5-hour mark, it's time to roll out your dough balls. Mine are 100 grams each, but you might have to do more or less depending on what size rings you use. Once they're all weighed out, roll them into tight dough balls. This takes a while to get the technique down, but once you do, it's pretty quick. And it definitely gives you a little shoulder workout. Once they're all rolled out, transfer them to your pans. If the dough is a little bit sticky, try your best not to touch the side of the rings with them. Add another layer of parchment paper on top of the rings and then put a pan on top of that pan. This will make sure that as they expand in the oven, the top stays nice and flat, and because it's touching another metal surface, it will also help with browning on the top. Set the trays aside for another hour or two to allow the English muffins to rise a second time and get nice and puffy. If you don't have time to bake tonight, you can always store them in the fridge and do the second rise in the morning. You might just need to add a little bit more time because the dough will be cold. I'm using a Simply Bread oven, so I'm setting it at 325 degrees, but if you are using your home oven, set it to 350. I bake mine for about 23 minutes, but in your home oven, the times may vary. The goal is to get the internal temperature between 200 and 210 degrees and until the top is nice and golden brown. You can let them cool in place or transfer them to a cooling rack while they're hot. Just make sure you wear oven mitts because the steel rings retain heat for quite some time. I let them cool overnight and then in the morning I package them. I like to shake off the excess cornmeal from the bottom so the bags aren't super messy. These will stay soft for about 3 to 4 days on the counter, but they also keep really well in the fridge and the freezer. I know it's a super long process, but I promise these will be the best English muffins you've ever had.